And of course I was one of the people who helped start Greenpeace, and sometimes I feel responsible for what's happened because it's gone so bad. But somebody reminded me that many organizations start out with these noble intentions with volunteers, like I was for many years, and then eventually you end up becoming a kind of business because you've got payroll to meet and you've got 20 employees and you're the boss and you've got to figure out how to keep this thing rolling. And you want, when I was there, I tried to make sure that our campaigns were based on truth and that they were serious issues such as nuclear weapons and saving whales from extinction and toxics going into the air and water. Those are the main things we focused on through the years. And you have to make payroll at the same time. And so you want to get people's attention and you want to get their support for what you're doing. But the next stage is quite often that it turns from a business into a racket. And Greenpeace turned into a racket as I was leaving it, because they decided they were going to campaign to ban chlorine worldwide. And of course chlorine is a very toxic compound as an element, but it's also a very important element for public health and medicine. I remind people, when I was a kid, iodine was the most important thing in the medicine chest as an antiseptic to prevent infection in a cut. And iodine is in the same family of elements as chlorine and fluorine and bromine. They're all very antiseptic. In other words, they kill bacteria. And that's why they're so important for public health. Adding the chlorine to drinking water is the classic example and is the most important advance there's ever been in public health to prevent cholera and other waterborne diseases from spreading among populations. So I had to leave Greenpeace at that. I'd been wanting to leave for some time because the more overarching problem was that the environmental movement gradually went from being quite humanitarian in their orientation, being concerned about people, in particular being concerned about all-out nuclear war, which is definitely there. You're concerned about other humans being killed by en masse. And but as we moved along, Greenpeace, which had been a unique synthesis of the long-standing peace movement in history, beginning with, say, Socrates, Martin Luther King, Gandhi, that sort of non-violent civil disobedience theme throughout history. And then the green, of course, was the emerging consciousness of nature that started around the 1960s in an activist way to protect nature. The green sort of ended up being all there was, and the peace kind of got dropped off along the way. And by the time I left Greenpeace, humans were regularly being characterized as the enemies of the earth. And it's as if humans are the only bad species. And even the diseases are good compared to humans. It's just the stupidest concept. The green movement, of course, is saying that fossil fuels are bad everywhere, but they're only picking on Canada. They're not trying to stop the United States from building pipelines or drilling for oil. The United States has increased its oil production by over half again, as much in the last years. And there are some obstructions of pipelines in the U.S., but the U.S. has 100 times more pipelines than Canada does, and we need a couple more, and they're successful in stopping it. And of course, most of the funding for that is coming from U.S. activists and foundations. So we're in a very bad, unique position in that they're actually picking on us from all quarters and trying to eliminate us from the competition for providing oil to all the people who want it every day and need it every day to get from one place to another in particular. But it's used for so many things. But they're getting away with calling Canadian oil dirty, as if there's some real dirtiness to it, when in fact it's just oil. It's just ridiculous. The idea that there's a climate emergency, and West Vancouver has passed a climate emergency, North Vancouver, Vancouver City, the federal government, all these governments all across from civic up to national are passing climate emergency resolutions and then doing nothing. The global temperature has only risen by 1 degree Celsius in the last 300 years, and we're acting as though it's an emergency. You know, people are passing emergency climate resolutions. It is the most gratuitous virtue signaling that could possibly exist.